we want our audience to know that you will be playing, Silver Abuse will be playing at our WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM 50th anniversary party this Saturday, May 4th, at 7 p.m. When the doors open and the bands are playing at 7:30 p.m.
Yeah, so it's very well designed for old farts like us because it's well past our bedtime.
Well, when you started out, there were many incarnations of silver abuse. Could you guide us a little bit through that so our audience understands better who you are?
We are really about, Dave, wouldn't you say like the third incarnation?
Uh, yeah, or maybe 2B.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, certainly the first in when 78 falls or 77 or something
78.
when they were in high school.
That would be with Santiago Durango was the original guitarist. But I have to add that he only played for 2 gigs with them. So hey. But the bass player was Camilo Gonzalez, who was with us until very, very recently. And the drummer was Bob Damerow, who now lives in Champaign and Urbana and is doing very well. And Bill Meehan is the singer, and he is still with us. He's basically our inspirational leader and writes most of our lyrics and directs our craziness.
AKA Boppin' Billy Bosco, who was the WZRD DJ for
years,
quite a while, 79 through 85 or something.
Well, he oddly enough, he didn't have to be a Northwestern student to be a DJ at ZRD in those days.
Oh. Yeah, we're northeastern. It's a kind of not that far away. Northeastern Illinois University. The other Northwestern is just Northwestern University. They're private. We're one of the 12 public.
They're scum. They're scum. And WZRD.
Hang on, I had an NUR show in the mid '90s.
Oh, but ZRD was playing punk rock music well before NUR. ZRD was the first.
Probably
in Chicago.
Yes, I think that when I was trained, I did hear about the history and I heard that. As a matter of fact, punk bands began in Chicago. Let's see, WZRD began in 1974, and you came on the scene about 1978, 79, and then Chicago punk bands were the beginning of punk bands. So how did Silver Abuse or your earlier incarnations figure into that?
Dave?
Well, Paul, you should answer this because, Paul mentioned the original four, and then I joined in August of 1981. Although I had met these guys, many of us went to UIC. And
campus, it was called then.
Yeah, I became the business manager of the Chicago Illini newspaper, and what do you know, Paul Chabala was the managing editor. Camilo was on the graphics staff. Kaleo was on the graphics staff. Al Zaprinsky.
Reagan was also on the graphics team at the Chicago.
So that's where I met all of these people. But Silver Abuse already existed at that point with, I guess, Paul, Bill, Damerow, and in '81 it was Jackie Disler as the vocalist.
We had a vocalist called Jackie Disler who unfortunately passed away in the early 2000s. A mad, crazy woman who was just delightful. delightfully
And
insane and just a wonderful poet and oh, out of this world front woman. We
film
miss her
credits.
dearly. We miss her dearly.
Mhm.
She has a film credit for what's the name of that film? Was it Dusan Makiyevik? Organism.
What's the film about?
It's kind of a New York street film.
Oh,
In her younger days, she lived in Greenwich Village.
uh-huh.
She partied with, well, she knows all the Greenwich Village beatniks, and I mean, she's a she was in the she was always been in the poetry and literary scene, and she knows Lord Ferlinghetti. She knows them. She knows and good friends with David Sedaris. I mean, stuff like that. She was just, and we never knew. Well, we knew about that, but for us, she was just Jackie. Our wonderful singer.
Mhm. Well, since she was into poetry, did she write any songs eventually? Or was that
Yes,
Bill?
she wrote a lot of the lyrics. She wrote a lot of the lyrics. She has a wonderful book of poetry out, which you can still get on eBay. It's called Leopard Radio,
Mm,
and her name is Jackie Disler, Disler. Leopard Radio, and it is still available, used on eBay and Amazon. It is available on Amazon used.
mhm.
Well
And the
worth reading.
film is
It's a very good.
Dusan Makievik's Mysteries of the Organism,
Oh,
1971.
yeah,
Nice.
but we were at the time there was very very few places to play. In 80, 81, and the only place who was really playing punk rock music on the air was WZRD, and for a while, and then after a while, WNUR and WHPK out of University of Chicago radio out of Hyde Park. They played punk, but
Mhm.
ZRD was the first.
Uh-huh. So the other stations did not respect that genre. They didn't think much of it, and they dismissed it.
Most people, most people only knew what the mainstream media wanted them to know about it, because the mainstream media they proclaimed punk dead because a lot of people had vested interest in all of the established rock and roll bands. They had a lot of money to lose, because if you looked at the record execs, if you looked at Europe, nobody wanted to listen to the old dinosaurs. Everybody's going to punk and eventually new wave. That was sweeping Europe, and they had a lot of invested into the you know Steely Dan, or I like Steely Dan. Don't get me wrong, but there's lots of effort invested in Van Halen, or people mainstream. Like they weren't going to give that up,
Hmm.
especially you could produce it so cheaply.
Hmm. So
Well,
how
ZRD's always had the no format,
mhm.
free form, whereas many of the other radio stations
Yes.
were compartmentalized, so they would jazz, classical, whatever, sports, but ZRD was just across the board. The DJ would play what was on, and many of the DJs worked in record stores and were
Oh,
hip to a lot of the
they got the newest stuff. They were
stuff,
all
punk rock.
always reading the British magazines to little Dougie travel, and Terry Nelson traveled to England, brought back stacks and stacks of punk rock records and played them on WZRD, which at the time you couldn't get those records here. But
Mhm.
and basically, ZRD introduced Chicago to punk rock. People knew about it, but it was really hard to get. There was no internet. You couldn't just dial it up, and if you didn't have a copy of the vinyl, you didn't hear it.
Mhm. What about other
W,
cities? Do you
WX,
know?
WXRT were certainly not going to play it.
Mhm.
They stayed well clear of that because they had advertisers to be concerned about. Oh,
Mhm.
punk rock, oh no.
Mhm.
And that was true though. People were very afraid, and people just were very vehement about their dislike, even though they've never heard it.
And so it began in Chicago before spreading to other cities. So the punk records didn't have a chance to play in other cities either. It just started with Chicago and WZRD, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think there was a good scene in wherever the Dead Boys and Dave might know
Cleveland.
Cleveland. I think there was a good punk scene in Cleveland, and obviously there's a good punk scene in New York.
Mm.
Um, but Chicago was actually kind of Johnny come lately in the punk scene. It
Oh.
started out on the East Coast and moved its way west, and then leaked across to California when it became cookie cutter spike hair punk rock. It's like, yeah, okay.
Hmm.
But
So
before that, it wasn't it wasn't it wasn't it wasn't formula yet.
mhm.
People did a lot of different things that is all lumped under punk rock. We don't sound like, well, have some of our songs sound punk rock, but most of our songs are just kind of twisted. We used to call ourselves acid punk or art damage punk. We were more art damage than punk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're very, very art damaged, really.
So for our listeners that
There's
don't
all
know, what's
there's
the
always social resistance to new
Somebody
forms,
Mhm.
there's rumors
especially if
there's
form has
rumors
some
that a
kind of
lot of
political
LSD was used, but
overtones.
I don't know.
Is there some of our listeners might not know about art damage, that kind of punk rock. So could you explain that to us?
What would be probably the best example would be somebody like Perubu, and then on a more mainstream level, much more mainstream level, Talking Heads. They're kind of art rock. Art Damage is more like Perubu because it's kind of twisted and kind of a little more surreal, a little more surreal.
It's a Talking Heads is kind of like a tribute band too, right?
I don't know, Dave.
No, they were pretty much all original as far as I know.
Oh.
They originated. I mean, Psycho Killer. When was that? 78.
Yeah,
Oh.
but just like us, you listen to their first album, they really couldn't play either. I mean,
Pretty much.
they learned by rote, and you listen to what they're actually playing. It's very simple, but effectively done. They play, obviously you play with emotion, but it's very simple stuff. But David Byrne's vocal and the unique phrasing, the unique rhythms that makes up for the lack of musical talent, or just entry level musical talent. Obviously, you practice, you get better.
But a lot of these, the newer forms were, I think of, uh, you know, like some punk rock had a certain anger to it, and other bands had kind of David Byrne had kind of a nervous
Yeah.
feel to it. And then there were, Throbbing Gristle, just industrial noise.
Yeah.
Forms that hadn't been heard before, delivered in a new way.
Actually, the whole noise or quote unquote difficult music scene was kind of an outgrowth of the art damaged scene, because a lot of it was just very hard to listen to, and intentionally so.
So when you mention formula punk rock, could you describe that? What makes formula punk rock?
Green Day,
Mm-hmm.
Based on blues progressions, 1-4-5, kind of formulaic.
but everybody at a certain point, everybody had to have a badge or emblem covered black leather motorcycle jacket, and the women had to wear fishneck stockings, and they had to have spiky hair.
Safety pins.
Everybody wore the same uniform. It was it got there was no individuality. They thought everybody was individual, but they all basically looked the same. It's like, no, in the early days, every punk rock band looked and sounded different, because they were it was more of a what was called the DI, do it yourself movement. The DI, yeah, I have after effects of a stroke.
The DIY, you're right.
Yes. It was. Go ahead.
I could think of maybe like the Casualties.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're formula at all, but they do certainly have that look.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it wasn't. Now there's a new era of punk who call themselves punks, that like they really know nothing about what punk rock was. It's just you have to have the uniform. You have to be angry. You have to hate mom. You have to hate the powers that be. It's like, it's formula. Silver Abuse was almost never political, and any kind of political songs are kind of absurd. Politics, we just want to make people happy and enjoy themselves.
I remember Fireside Bowl on Fullerton.
Yeah.
There are a lot of punk rock shows there. So before Fireside Bowl, I don't know when Fireside Bowl started.
Did you ever see Jinx Pack there?
No.
They were good. Go ahead.
Oh, but what were some of the venues, and what kind of places did you play back in the day?
Cubby Bear.
There were like 4 of them.
Yeah.
Exit, Cubby Bear. There's a place called Come On Down on Devon Avenue.
Okay.
The COD. That's
a lot of large party.
And the other, Nick and Reagan rehearsed upstairs. Space Place was a warehouse loft space in the fish market in the Fulton Market area, which had huge shows, and they also rented rehearsal spaces. But they had a whole loft building. But there was another,
run by Screaming Rachel.
Screaming Rachel.
Rachel and Frankie Knuckles started off there.
We would play at Exit, but there was another place that we played. It just escapes my mind. Waves was downstairs from. Downstairs from that was
Misfits. It was Misfits. Devon, and it was on Sheridan, just north of Devon. Misfits on the 2nd floor, and Minstrels was the 1st floor. A folk place on the 1st floor. Misfits was the punk bar on the 2nd floor.
And there was it'll come to me before the end of the effigies over. There's another place that people would let us play. Of course, Oz.
The mayor of a pair back in the way early days.
Well, Oz. I don't know if we mentioned that.
Oh, Oz,
That's
sure.
basically
Absolutely.
where everybody started out, because Exit and Oz was basically the first, and Exit was the second that regularly let punk bands play. Tutu and the Pirates were able to play at some of the suburban clubs. They were able to present themselves, and they were accepted as I don't want to offend them because I love them, but they were able to present themselves to the general public as kind of a novelty act, and so the tourists would go see the punk show. So Tutu Pirates were the first band who gigged out regularly because they had some connections or something. They were a fun band, so very, very, very fun. So, but they were the first
Actually,
ones that,
Skafish had a lot of.
yeah,
Skafish was a really early pioneer.
yes. You are right. Those two were playing out before anybody else, and the effigies were soon after.
And was it difficult to get gigs?
Yes, there were only those two early days, or only one or two places.
Did you play
They would,
garages and
they didn't book
basements?
bands every night. A lot of them would only book bands on Friday and Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there weren't that many bands either.
Well, it's worth noting that these
Maybe
were
10
the
bands,
Daly days. Well, just post Richard M. Daly.
Yeah.
And who did not take kindly to punk rock.
No.
Any gathering of 2 or more people with black leather jackets would attract possibly police attention.
Oh, it almost always did. They would at least stop by. There was a lot of subtle and some not so subtle harassment.
But
And people. Mainstream.
Just move along.
No, you just walking down the street, and the people who listen to the mainstream rock and roll, listening to the Loop with their long hair parted down the middle, would just jump out of their cars and beat you up if you even look like a punk rocker, because punks were obviously faggots. I mean, obviously. Why would you? How would you? We had short hair. We didn't have bell bottoms. I mean, there's something wrong with us.
So it sounds like it was dangerous being a punk.
Sometimes.
Well,
After dark, sometimes you didn't want. Yeah, there were. Yes.
were there neighborhoods in which it was more dangerous?
Chicago was a very segregated neighborhood in many ways. I mean, culturally as well as racially.
Yes. Oh, yes.
There were places where, they're not so friendly. If you walked into a neighborhood bar in Bridgeport, if you weren't Italian, they might kick you out.
Well, if you walk into a neighborhood bar in Bridgeport with a Cubs hat on, you might get beat up in those days. These days, you'll be the last to be served. They probably won't beat you up, but they will probably spit in your beer.
Wow.
Oh yeah, very culture. Chicago is very racially and culturally segregated. Always has.
What about your songs? I know that you don't get political in your songs, but do you comment on this? Even like tangentially.
Not on stage.
Oh, upstage lesson.
Well, you might have to study some of Bill's lyrics to discern what in the heck he's talking about.
We have
maybe more trouble than it's worth, to tell you the truth.
I mean, one of our most popular songs, and we've been doing this until since like 1979, is a song it's on YouTube, several versions of it, called "Kill the Commies." It's a fun-loving, rousing anthem, and it's mostly silly.
Kill the commies, run right home and tell your mommies.
Yeah, it's just a rhyming doggerel. Most of it is
Yeah,
doggerel.
yeah, anything that rhymes. There you go. We've knocked out a verse.
So how about your
And even
shows?
even at our rehearsals, and it's sometimes not successful, but I would say 95% successful, that we just avoid politics. It's just easier all around. We like to just make music, and music makes people happy, and we don't care what your politics are so long as your money is green.
Sounds like
I
a
mean, and
plan.
that's the way it should be. And you will find we know from long life, and believe me, we have lived a long life, that most people have much more in common than they have to drive them apart.
Mhm.
And all you have to do is look at those common denominators, and you find out that they're pretty much all the same if you really look at it.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's some assholes, but they're easy. Those people are easy to spot and easy to avoid.
So there are polarizing issues, but all in all, we are all human beings.
Well, I would like to pay less for my groceries. I'm sure you would too.
Yes.
But we don't need to talk about why, at least right here. You know, we're talking about music and WZRD.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know, and the influence that WZRD has had on making a lot of people happy for a long time.
thank you. For your name, Silver Abuse, do you know why Silver Abuse? Why not Gold Abuse or Platinum Abuse?
Bill,
Well, I'll tell you Bill's
I think
story.
he all believes. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
Supposedly he was running for a bus. Damon and Montrose or something slipped on the sidewalk, bumped his head, and
Uh-huh.
he said, "I sat up and thought to myself, silver abuse,"
Really?
and that was it.
Oh.
Supposedly, well,
I heard
that's the story Bill has told.
I heard a story, it may be apocryphal, that when they were trying to think up a name, one of the possibility was using antabuse. Antabuse.
Uh,
And antabuse is a drug that it's given to, sometimes it's given to alcoholics. It will make you violently ill if you consume alcohol. This is given to very hardcore alcoholics who will die if they have another drink. It's called
I
antabuse.
always thought it might have something to do with the Silver Beatles, who eventually dropped the word silver.
I think it has a lot to do with a lot of those things. I think it's a jumble of a lot of those things. And also, I remember from Santiago said that they chose it because it didn't mean anything. And it doesn't mean anything. You know,
All kinds of
and we
origins.
stuck with it. We considered changing our name in 1982, 81, 82, but we continued using Silver Abuse basically because it was already an established name. We already had press, so most of it not very good, but bad or good press. There's, you know,
why did you
press,
want to change the name?
So we decided to go back to Silver Abuse just because people remember us.
Mhm. And why did you want to change the name? It sounds like a very good name.
Well, for 1 year, we in 19 very very late 1979 through the end of 1980, we went under the name the Wayouts.
Mm. Mhm.
Santiago had left Silver Abuse. I had not joined Silver Abuse yet. Silver Abuse was in limbo. Camilo, the bass player, wanted to start another band with basically the same people, except Santiago didn't want to be in the band anymore. So he asked me and another guitarist called Alzo Pinsky. Everybody calls him Alzo, Alzo. And so we had basically Camilo on drums, Bob Dabrow on bass, Bill Meehan on vocals, Alzo and myself on guitar. So we figured, well, we were kind of the way outs, but Alzo was contributing a lot of the songs. So he didn't want to be called Silver Abuse, so he wanted to be called the Way Outs because that's a band name from the Flintstones. You can look it up. But we were for about a year and a half. The Way Outs were around, and then Alzo quit. And then we started to carry on, and we said, well, it's basic. The Way Outs was basically Alzo's concept, but we wanted to carry on, so we said, well, let's just go back to Silver Abuse because we already have name recognition. So basically, we just basically went on without Alzo, and eventually Camilo quit to join Naked Ray Gun, and Bob and Bill started playing bass, and we got Jackie Disler as a vocalist.
Mhm.
And then a little bit after that, Dave came on board as keyboard player.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been
And that would be in like
I've been going by
that'd be like 1981.
Mm.
I've been coming by their practice space and hanging around, and one day, and I was aware that
He just made this suggestion. Hey, I got a piano.
Camilo had quit and Jackie had joined, and Damrow then wanted to quit. And Paul, as we were walking out, said, "Oh my goodness, we don't have a. What are we going to do for a drummer? We don't have a drummer." And I said, "Well, I've got this piano at home, but I don't know how to play drums." And Paul thought for a minute and said, "Why don't you bring your piano by?" So that's how I joined the band, even though it doesn't solve that drummer problem.
We tried a couple of drummer auditions, nothing worked out, and then Jim, I had been playing guitar with Jim Kaleo, the original drummer from Naked Ray Gun. I had been playing with him since high school. I went to high school and college with him, so I already knew him, and I was in a high school band with him. So I was able to. He was already in Naked Ray Gun, but I was able to convince him to be drummer for Silver Abuse, and he was our drummer for 2 years, for about 2.5 years, until about eight, not, oh, 80.
Well, I think it was the end of
Robert
82,
joined?
Robert.
And
I think it was
Robert
the end of
joined,
82.
yeah. So until and 1982, our current drummer joined. So we're all old timers, but Bill is the oldest surviving member. But we also had a saxophone player, Donnie Krotner, played with us for a year, and unfortunately he was killed in a tragic motorcycle crash, much too young. He died back in the day. So
85, 86, something like that.
yeah,
80.
he's a wild man.
So for the show, for the 50-year anniversary coming up, can you what
We
does
better practice.
you better practice. What does the lineup look like for the show?
Okay.
Well, Bill on vocals, Paul on guitar, Robert on drums, me on keyboards, and Rich Dolesh is our new bass player, replaced Camilo a couple years ago.
All right.
Rich Dolish is also the bass player for Hot Lips Messiah. He used to be way back in the day, he used to be the bass player for the Pinheads. And he's also bass player with a monster themed band called the Oohs and Ahs. And he's a very busy guy. Great bass player, and yeah, we're lucky to have him.
How many albums are you do you have out, and will you be selling any albums at the party?
We will probably still have a few copies of our last album. It's called Consider the Pigeon. we technically have 3 albums out. For the first 2 are CD only, very limited release. Our first one is called Dogs Laughed at Us. It was done in like 2005. And our next one was in 2008, I think, and it was called Music, Dancing, and Tainted Meat. And that was mostly a compilation of live and vintage stuff. And that's very rare. There's only maybe 100 copies of that floating around. And the Dogs Laughed at Us, there's probably maybe 300 copies of that floating around. I don't even have a good copy of it anymore.
Oh.
So I do have the master, and I'm planning on re-releasing it. We do have we have EPs. A lot of it is in the can, have to be mixed. Some overdubs have to be done, and we have new material almost ready to be released. And we're going to be doing some very new stuff at this show. Some stuff that's only a couple of months old, and stuff that a lot of people have not heard. I do want to say that we are really not a quote unquote revival act. We're mostly doing new material, stuff that has been at least written within the last 5, 6, 7 years. So we do some old vintage stuff, but maybe 5 songs. What would you say, Dave? That percentage?
I think there's probably 15 minutes of, in any one given set, maybe, 12 minutes of the original songs, 15, and then songs from 2015 from Consider the Pigeon, and then, the rest of it is new songs from the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
We also should mention that Fall from Grace EP.
Oh yeah, that was put out in
on vinyl.
1982 on vinyl. It's a 7-inch, 45 RPM on the first side, 33 and the third RPM on the second side, and that's still available. I will have copies of that. I still have a few. I have about 30 or 40 copies of that left. We printed 1,000, and I have about 30 or 40 copies, and I will bring. Thank you, Dave, for reminding me. I will bring those to the show.
Oh, thank you.
We'll have also the Busted at Oz compilation.
We will
just before I joined the band. God, what's his last name? Hopkins. Dem Hopkins recorded an album at Oz, a compilation of Effigies, Naked Reagan, Silver Abuse, Subverts. That's been reissued. So there are 4 tunes from Silver Abuse playing live at Oz, but just before I joined the band.
Actually, you do show up on our EP "Fall from Grace" on one song.
Yes.
Yes, you are. You're on that. You're on that.
Yes, I am.
As is Jim Kaleo on 2 songs, and the original drummer Bob Jam are on 1 song. So the second side has 4 songs on it. That's 33 1/3. 8 minutes worth of material on the second side of a 7-inch EP.
So we're celebrating our 50 years of freeform radio since 1974 here at Wizard. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
Keep listening.
Yeah, do not neglect the Wizard. Radio is magic. Playlists and pre-programmed, iPads, they're great, but sometimes you want somebody else to choose your music, because sometimes you don't know that some piece of music are there, because so you want somebody else to choose your music just because you don't know everything that's out there. And the Wizards are in the business of knowing the coolest and the hippest stuff, and they have always been. I wanted to Dave, do you remember right after Bob and Bill's show on Saturday afternoon, there was a show, a whole hour, called the Industrial Report, and they had light elevator music going on in the background, and the guy was reading technical manuals for a whole hour.
There was some of that.
I mean, but that program ran for several years. The Industrial Report. And we would listen to it Saturday afternoon. Yeah, that was right before tan tea time with little Dougie, or right after, or whatever.
So you never know what you're going to hear on Wizard.
Nope. For your track, Considerate Pigeon, that sounds a little bit political, a little bit. There are so many pigeons in Chicago. Do you know if it was Bill? Was he commenting on the pigeon population?
It was just
you might have to ask.
Up with the title. Bill came up with the title, but it was just supposed to be absurdist.
It kind of sounds like a warning.
Yeah.
Consider the pigeon.
Well,
Watch out.
They're coming. If you see you can look it up on
Bandcamp.
Or on YouTube. Just type in Silver Abuse topic, and the album cover is the thumbnail, and there's somebody on the park bench, and a typewriter is next to him, and pigeons are typing out a message, and he was surrounded by pigeons. So check that out.
Okay.
I'm sure you've got a copy of the record in your studio somewhere.
Okay.
Misfiled.
Yes.
If you do want to play anything out of that record, I would recommend Mojo Hobo or Jazz Numbers. or Jazz Mockery, I think it's called.
Jazz Mockery?
Yep. I
Oh,
think that Jazz Mockery is very short, but very well produced. If I do say so myself. Nice stereo about it.
So, how many of the band members are going to be playing on Saturday?
All of us.
All of us. Great. All of you. Great, great, great.
Well, five of us.
And what's in the future? Do you have any projects that are going that you're working on?
We have another gig, upcoming gig in the end of the
Liars.
Liars Club gig.
Oh,
And then we are going to finish up our recordings and get those at least on Bandcamp and into all the streaming services. We've got about 5 or 6 songs like almost ready to release.
mhm.
2 or 3 of them are
And
released.
great. You said 3 of them are, right? Ready for
Oh,
release?
yeah.
Oh,
And
awesome.
we'll actually have 1 or 2 burned CD versions of a couple of our new songs, very, very new songs.
Mhm.
We've got a nice CD version of Florida Man and another one of Fine Motor Skills. You know, some one-offs that are release quality. We'll have some burned CDs of those also at the show.
Awesome.
And for the punk rock scene, you know that you kind of mentioned that it became a little bit more mainstream, but is there still a segment of the punk rock that is non-mainstream punk rock,
Real punk rock.
real punk rock?
Does it still live?
Well, there's us.
Yes. Yay.
Dave, what do you think?
What do you consider real punk rock? You know, it's what you like.
Not Green Day.
It's not derivative.
Mhm.
I don't think we're derivative. I don't think we have any idea what we're playing.
Yeah. You know,
So
I think that's
you'll hear some real punk rock at the ZRD
yes.
50th anniversary party,
Okay.
Yeah.
And
as we define it.
and when you perform, is it do you rehearse and then perform exactly like the rehearsal, or does it
Never
does
play
it
the same song the same way twice.
Mhm.
awesome?
We
Yeah,
practice.
if we could figure out how to do that, we wouldn't have to rehearse so much.
What we do practice so we can do it consistently well.
Mhm.
We are mostly practicing at trying to listen to each other and playing off of each other. I don't want to say because we are really nothing like it, but we take a lot of inspiration from the way jazz musicians play. We're not most jazz musicians in terms of their musical ability just practice a hell of a lot more than we do. But we are beginning to understand how they relate to each other, how they listen to each other and play off of progressions. And that's what is really delighting us these days. Not just the boom, 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 3 chords, do, first chorus, end. You know, and that's what we did for years and years and years. But now we're just listening, and some songs we extend and kind of jam out a little bit. Some songs we will just play right through like the old days, and sometimes we'll change them up. Sometimes we do both at once on a long song, and that's what's keeping us alive rather than just doing the same thing. Well, that's what keeps us from being a revival act, because we just do the same songs the way that we did them 40 years ago, but we play better.
That keeps fun and vibrant.
Yes.
And
And
you don't
yeah,
know what to expect, but you're supporting one another.
yes, and a lot of it is a little bit of freedom because most of us are retired. Yeah, you know, we won't state our age. I'm only 39. You know, Dave is a year older. He's 40. Oh, but but we're so we have time to, and those of us who are married actually have spouses who are tolerant enough to let us indulge in our hobbies and our they see that it gives us great pleasure, and so we're very lucky. We're very, very lucky that we can keep music in our lives.
And we are very lucky to have you. It's a
Music
freedom
keeps you
punk.
young. Music keeps you young.
Yes, freedom punk and a freedom forum here at Wizard, and we work very well together.
I hope so. I hope so. You
We're
guys are
looking.
great. And
How are you?
on good days, I can pick you up on the radio out here in Maywood.
Oh,
Mm. Oh, do you?
Not all the time, but sometimes I can. Yeah,
Mm,
you here.
when the wind's blowing in your direction.
Yes, yes.
likely. Do you use the stream when
Yes. Yes.
awesome. Yes. Well, Dave and Paul, thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today, and we will talk again in the future. But meanwhile, we look forward to seeing you and all the other participants to celebrate our 50th WZRD anniversary party on Saturday, May 4th. Doors open at 7. It's a free it's a free event. So everybody, please
Please
come.
come. Please come.
And we'll see you there in person.
Yes.
I hope to
Looking
see
forward to
all
seeing
of
you too.
I hope to see all of you wizards there, and we guarantee a good time. Please come. Please come.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we will see you on Saturday.
great. Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Silver
Thank
Abuse.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, wizards.
You.
Thanks, Dave.
See you, Paul.